Photoshop's Select Subject feature does a great job of selecting the main subject in an image. Now, it uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to try to identify the primary subject, and it's been optimized for portraits, which happen to be the most selected subject in Photoshop, but I find myself using it for all sorts of images. So in this image, I want to select the scarecrow and desaturate the background to put the emphasis on that primary subject. So I'll choose the Select menu and then Subject. As we can see, Photoshop has defined the subject. It's done a great job on the pumpkin head as well as the shoulders. And then it's missed a little bit down here as well as kind of selected too much with the pumpkins here. But let's go ahead and add a hue saturation adjustment layer. And for now, I'll desaturate the layer 100%. But since it's selected the scarecrow and what I really want to do is desaturate the background, I'll click on the mask icon in the properties panel and then choose to invert it. I'll go ahead and zoom in using Command 1 on Mac or Control 1 on Windows, and then use the spacebar in order to pan around. Then I can tap B to select the brush tool, and I'll use the left bracket in order to get a little bit smaller of a brush. And making sure that I'm painting with white, I'm going to just go around the edges here, making sure that Photoshop isn't leaving any areas colored that I want to hide. So I'll just scoot around. Now here, it actually didn't select enough, so I'll tap the X key and just paint in with black in order to hide the hue saturation adjustment layer because that's actually desaturating it. All right, I need to paint right here. I can click once, hold down the Shift key and paint again. And then let's just fill in this little area here. It's a little bit of fabric and it's kind of no wonder that it missed it. I'm not sure I would have seen that either unless I zoomed into 100%. All right, so we can keep scooting around, but when we get down to this area right here, it's a little bit more complex, right? So obviously the artificial intelligence and machine learning probably hasn't been trained on, well, it's been trained on feet, but probably not scarecrow feet. So I would like to select the rest of this straw and paint it in, but I don't really want to do it by hand. I mean, I could get a smaller paintbrush. And then if we look at the mask by option clicking on it, we can see that I need to paint with black in a number of areas. So I could click once, get a little bit of a smaller brush using the left bracket key, and then hold down the Shift key in order to paint in between those lines. Or I could come in and I could just hand paint some of this area in here. But again, it would be nice if I could have a little bit of help on the selection. So I'm going to return to the background layer and then use the select menu to select based on color range. You want to make sure that you select the background and you're not on the hue and saturation adjustment layer, because if you are, Photoshop will actually use the mask for the hue and saturation layer and try to do the color range within that masked area. So with the background selected, I'll choose color range, and you can select from a number of different preset color ranges, or you can select the highlights, midtones, or shadows, or even the skin tone or anything that's out of gamut. But for now, I'm going to set this to sampled colors. And when I click, you can see that it will make a mask or sample the similar colors. So if I click up in the pants, we get a very different looking mask. I'm going to click once in the yellow straw, and then to add to that selection, I can hold down the Shift key and click. You see, I get a very different selection as soon as I go down into the lighter areas. So I'm actually going to release the Shift key for a moment and just click down here. And I'm going to look at the mask here. It's doing a really good job. It's really like it's picking up more towards the highlights than it actually is the yellows in the image. And if I click on the selection preview right here and we switch this to say a black matte, we can see there it's doing a nice job. So wherever is white is the area that's going to be affected. All right, so just one more slider. There is a fuzziness slider. This can add to or decrease the number or the range of sampled colors that it's going to select. I'll leave it up around 80, maybe 90, and then click OK. So when you click OK, you end up with the marching ants around the areas that are selected. Now don't forget, Photoshop only shows you marching ants in areas that are more than 50% selected. I'll return to the hue saturation adjustment layer by clicking on the mask and then tap the B key to select my paintbrush. I can get a much larger brush now, and I need to make sure that I'm painting with black in those areas. And then I can go ahead and just paint in there, and we can see some of that color coming back. Excellent. We'll go ahead and deselect that. There might be a few additional areas that I need to go in and just touch up, but that's going to be much quicker after I use that color range option. Excellent. Let's zoom back out. I'll use Command 0 on Mac or Control 0 on Windows. So when you have an obvious subject in the image, be sure to give Select Subject a try. And if you want to make a selection based on color or on shadows, your midtones, or your highlights, be sure to give Color Range a try.